The night sky above Earth's most powerful space observatory in Chile was unusually clear. Dr. Robert Miller sat at his desk, sipping his third cup of coffee when the first alerts began flashing across his screens. At first, he thought it was a system error. The energy readings were unlike anything he had seen in his 20 years of watching the stars. "This can't be right," he muttered, adjusting his glasses. The readings showed massive energy signatures near Neptune's orbit, far larger than any natural phenomenon should produce. He quickly cross-referenced the data with other observatories around the world. Within minutes, his phone started ringing. It was the director of NASA's Deep Space Monitoring Division. "Are you seeing this, Robert?" the director asked, his voice tense. "Yes, sir. I'm looking at it right now. These readings, they're off the charts." The next 48 hours became a blur of activity. Space agencies worldwide turned every available telescope toward the anomaly. What they found changed humanity forever. A fleet of massive ships, each larger than Earth's largest cities, moving with impossible precision through the outer solar system. The vessels were beautiful in a terrifying way. Their hulls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating dark silhouettes against the stars. Complex patterns of blue and purple energy danced across their surfaces, suggesting power systems far beyond human understanding. In Washington, D.C., the United Earth Defense Council gathered in their underground chamber. The room was filled with military leaders, scientists, and government officials from every major nation. The atmosphere was tense but controlled. Humanity had prepared for this possibility, even if they hadn't expected it so soon. General Laura Thompson stood at the main display, pointing to the projected course of the alien fleet. "They're moving in a standard formation, suggesting military organization. Current speed puts them at Jupiter's orbit within 72 hours. "What about their capabilities?" asked the Chinese representative, leaning forward in his chair. "Based on their energy signatures alone," Dr. Miller spoke up from his video feed, "each of those ships could power the entire Earth for a century. Their technology is, well, it's beyond our current understanding." The Russian defense minister slammed his fist on the table. "Then what hope do we have if they're hostile?" The room fell silent. On the main screen, new data streamed in from the deep space telescopes. The ships were now visible in high resolution, revealing markings that could only be some form of written language. They were elegant, flowing symbols that seemed to shimmer and change as they watched. "Look at this," Dr. Miller said, his voice filled with awe. He zoomed in on one of the larger vessels. "These markings are consistent across all ships. I believe we're looking at the flag or emblem of their civilization." The council's attention was drawn to a sudden movement on the screen. Several smaller vessels had broken away from the main fleet, accelerating toward the inner solar system at incredible speeds. "Scout ships," General Thompson said grimly. "Classic military tactic. They're coming to assess our defenses." The council president stood up, his face grave but determined. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've prepared for this moment. Every nation in this room has contributed to our defensive capabilities. It's time to implement Protocol Omega." Across Earth, hidden facilities began powering up. In underground bunkers, military personnel took their stations. Satellite networks realigned themselves, and deep space monitoring stations went into high alert. Dr. Miller watched from his observatory as the scout ships crossed Saturn's orbit. Through his telescope, he could see more details of their construction. Seamless hulls that seemed to flow like liquid metal, propulsion systems that left no visible exhaust, and what appeared to be weapon emplacements that made Earth's most powerful weapons look like toys. As the sun rose over the Pacific, humanity faced its first day knowing they were not alone, and that their visitors came with overwhelming force. In orbit, the International Space Station's crew observed the approaching ships with a mixture of wonder and fear. They were humanity's closest watchers to what was coming. The first contact humanity had dreamed of for centuries was about to happen, but not in the way anyone had imagined. The question wasn't whether Earth would meet aliens. It was whether Earth would survive the meeting. 3 days after the first sighting, the alien fleet had reached Jupiter's orbit. The world held its breath, and for the first time in human history, every nation stood united in watchful silence. News channels worldwide showed the same images: the massive dark ships moving with perfect precision through space. At exactly 3:00 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, every screen on Earth flickered. Television broadcasts, computer monitors, even digital billboards in Times Square all displayed the same image. A figure appeared, tall and elegant, with features that seemed almost human but not quite. Its skin had a slight metallic sheen, and its eyes held an unnatural purple glow. The being spoke, and automatic translation systems worldwide began processing its words. Its voice was smooth, almost musical, but filled with unmistakable authority. "People of Earth," the figure announced, "you have the honor of addressing High Commander Marcus of the Galactic Imperial Fleet." The translation was perfect, too perfect, suggesting their visitors had been studying Earth's languages for some time. In the United Earth Defense Council chamber, General Thompson watched with narrowed eyes. "They chose to appear almost human," she whispered. "This is psychological warfare, making themselves seem familiar to lower our guard." The message continued. "The Galactic Empire has observed your world for many of your years. We have watched your wars, your struggles, and your slow crawl toward the stars. The Empire has decided that the time has come to welcome Earth into our domain." The beam's expression shifted into what might have been a smile, but it didn't reach its eyes. "You have 72 of your hours to prepare for integration. Resistance is—" It paused, almost amused, unnecessary. The transmission then changed, showing scenes from other worlds. The images were clearly chosen for impact. Beautiful cities reduced to mining complexes, once proud alien races working in vast industrial facilities, entire planets transformed into resource extraction centers. Dr. Miller, still at his observatory, recorded every frame of the transmission. "Look at the background details," he sent in an urgent message to the Council. "Those worlds, they're not just mining colonies, they're being systematically stripped of resources." The High Commander's face returned to the screens. "For your understanding, we have prepared data packets containing the basic laws and expectations of Imperial citizenship. Your world will be assigned a resource quota. Meet it, and you will be treated well. Resist." The images of the devastated worlds flashed again briefly. In Washington, Moscow, Beijing, and every other capital, leaders received detailed documents outlining Earth's future under Imperial rule. The demands were staggering: 80% of all mineral resources, 60% of biological resources, and voluntary conscription of 10% of the human population for Imperial service. The Council chamber erupted in angry shouts as members read through the demands. The Russian defense minister threw his tablet across the room. "They don't want to rule us. They want to strip our planet bare." "Quiet." General Thompson's voice cut through the chaos. "Look at what they're not saying. No mention of our defense capabilities. No reference to Project Phoenix. They think we're helpless." Dr. Miller's voice came through the speakers, thoughtful despite the crisis. "The transmission was designed to overwhelm us with their power, but they're being careful. Too careful. They're not showing their full military strength. Why?" The Council president stood up, his face grim but determined. "Because they're not as invincible as they want us to think. Every empire in history has had its weaknesses. We have 72 hours to find theirs." Outside the Council chamber, the world reacted to the Imperial message. Some called for immediate surrender, hoping to avoid the fate shown in those terrible images. Others demanded resistance at any cost. In cities across the globe, people gathered in streets and squares, looking up at the sky where somewhere, beyond the blue, the Imperial fleet waited. Time was counting down. Humanity had 3 days to decide its fate: submit to become another conquered world in the Empire's collection, or take a stand that might end in Earth's destruction. But in secure facilities around the world, teams of scientists and military strategists worked frantically, preparing humanity's response to the Empire's demands. The Empire had made their move. Now it was Earth's turn to reply. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility few knew existed, Dr. Thomas Reed stood before a massive window overlooking humanity's greatest secret. Project Phoenix filled the enormous underground chamber, its central core pulsing with a soft blue light that seemed to bend the very air around it. "Status report," he called out to his team, his voice steady despite the weight of Earth's future on his shoulders. "Core temperature stable at -273.1 degrees Celsius," replied Dr. Anna West, her fingers moving rapidly across her control panel. "Quantum field alignment at 99.8%. The system is ready, sir." The facility had been built 20 years ago, funded secretly by every major nation on Earth. While the public saw space programs struggling with basic rocket technology, the world's brightest minds worked here, pushing the boundaries of physics itself. Above them, nearly 3 miles of ocean and reinforced bunkers hid their work from prying eyes. Even now, with alien ships in the solar system, their sensors would see nothing but empty ocean. Dr. Reed's phone buzzed, a secure call from the Defense Council. He put it on speaker. "Doctor," General Thompson's voice was tense. "The Imperial fleet is holding position near Mars. We need to know, can Phoenix do what you promised?" Reed looked at the massive machine before him. Its design was beautiful in its complexity. Dozens of rings rotating in different directions, containing exotic matter kept at temperatures approaching absolute zero. At its heart, a sphere of pure energy twisted space itself into impossible shapes. "Phoenix can manipulate time and space in ways that break most laws of physics," he explained. "We've successfully tested it at 5% power, creating small time dilation fields. But at full power," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "At full power, we could theoretically trap their entire fleet in a bubble where time moves so slowly that 1,000 years would pass in seconds." The silence on the other end was heavy. "And the risks?" Dr. West spoke up, her voice carrying the weight of countless simulations. "At full power, there's a 30% chance we could tear a hole in space-time. Best case, it only destroys the solar system. Worst case," she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. In the control room, technicians monitored dozens of screens showing the machine's status. One of them, Jack Porter, called out, "Doctor, we're detecting unusual quantum fluctuations in Ring 7. Reed rushed to the console. The readings showed exactly what he feared. The machine was becoming unstable just from running at minimal power. They had never dared test it at anything close to full capacity. "The Empire gave us 72 hours, General Thompson reminded them. "We have 48 left. Can you stabilize it?" Dr. Reed watched as his team worked frantically to adjust the quantum field alignments. The blue glow from the core flickered briefly, then steadied. "We can stabilize it," he answered finally. "But General, you need to understand something. We get one shot at this. Whether we succeed or fail, the machine will burn out. The exotic matter at its core took 15 years to produce. We can't make more in time." Through the window, he could see the rings beginning to spin faster, their movement hypnotic. Project Phoenix had been humanity's insurance policy against extinction, built in secret while the world went about its daily life. Now it was their only hope. "Dr. West," Reed called out, "begin power-up sequence alpha. Mr. Porter, start the quantum field calibration. If we're going to do this, we need to be ready." The facility hummed with increasing energy as the machine awakened. In the observation room above, military officers watched in silence as humanity's last resort came to life. Dr. Reed touched the cold glass of the window, his reflection overlaying the glowing machine beyond. 20 years, he whispered. 20 years of work, all coming down to one moment. The Empire didn't know about Phoenix. They couldn't. Their scans would show Earth as a primitive world with basic space technology and simple weapons. That was humanity's advantage, the only one they had. As the machine powered up, Dr. Reed thought about the irony. Humanity had built this weapon not to fight aliens, but to protect themselves from their own worst instincts. Now it might save them from a threat they never imagined they'd face. The countdown had begun. The Imperial scout ship moved silently through space, its dark hull reflecting the distant sunlight as it approached Mars. Inside the Project Phoenix facility, Dr. Reed watched its progress on the main screen, his hand steady on the control panel despite the stakes. "Target locked," announced Jack Porter, his voice tight with tension. "Scout ship is isolated from the main fleet, just as planned." Dr. West's fingers flew across her keyboard, making final adjustments. "Quantum field stabilized at 15% power. Ready on your command, sir." The room fell silent. Everything they had worked for, every secret experiment and midnight calculation, had led to this moment. On a secure channel, General Thompson's voice crackled through. "Remember, doctors, this is a demonstration only. Show them enough to make them think twice, but not enough to reveal Phoenix's full capabilities." Dr. Reed nodded, though the general couldn't see him. "Understood. Beginning sequence now." He pressed his palm against the biometric scanner, and Project Phoenix's rings began to spin faster. "Energy levels rising," reported Dr. West. 10%, 12%, 15%, holding steady. On the screen, they watched as a barely visible distortion began to form around the scout ship. At first, it looked like a heat haze, the kind you might see above hot pavement on a summer day. Then it began to shimmer with a faint blue light. "Time dilation field forming," Porter announced. "Initial readings show time inside the field is moving at approximately 1,000 years per Earth second." Through the facility's powerful cameras, they watched in awe as the Imperial scout ship began to age. Its seemingly indestructible hull started to dull, then corrode. Materials that had likely been designed to last centuries began to degrade as a millennium passed in the blink of an eye. "My God," whispered someone in the control room. The ship's hull was now visibly deteriorating, its once smooth surface pitting and cracking. Energy patterns that had danced across its surface flickered and died. Dr. Reed checked the readings. 15 seconds have passed out here. Inside the field. He paused, calculating. That's 15,000 years. The effect on the scout ship was devastating. Systems designed by one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were no match for the relentless march of time. Metals fatigued, compounds broke down, and energy sources depleted. "Field collapse in 3, 2, 1. Dr. West counted down. The blue shimmer vanished. Where the proud Imperial scout ship had been, there now floated only debris. Ancient, corroded fragments of what had once been advanced technology. "Send the message," ordered General Thompson over the comm. Dr. Reed pressed another button, and a simple transmission beamed toward the Imperial fleet. "That was one ship. That was our warning." In the following minutes, they watched the Imperial fleet's reaction. First came confusion. Dozens of scans directed at the debris field. Then, frantic communication bursts between ships. Finally, silence. "Power down sequence beginning," announced Dr. West. "All systems returning to standby." Dr. Reed leaned back in his chair, exhaustion suddenly hitting him. They had done it. Demonstrated Earth's power without revealing their true capabilities. The test had used just 15% of Phoenix's potential, but to the Empire, it would look like a display of unimaginable technological advancement. "Sir," called Porter from his station, "we're detecting massive energy spikes from the Imperial fleet. They're powering up their weapons." But Dr. Reed smiled. "No," he said quietly. "Those aren't weapon signatures. They're scanning us with everything they have, trying to figure out how we did it." The room collectively held its breath as they waited for the Empire's response. Minutes stretched into hours. The debris of their scout ship continued to drift, a silent testament to Earth's capabilities. In the observation room above, military officers from a dozen nations watched the feeds. One of them, a general from India, summed up what everyone was thinking. For the first time in their history, the Empire faces something they don't understand. And nothing is more terrifying than that. The warning shot had been fired. Now they could only wait to see how the Empire would respond to a civilization that could turn their ships to dust with apparent ease. Earth's message was clear. We are not as helpless as you think. For the first time in 10,000 years of galactic conquest, the Imperial High Command faced total confusion. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, High Commander Marcus stood silent, watching the debris field that had once been one of his most advanced scout ships. "Impossible," he muttered, his metallic-tinged skin reflecting the red glow of Mars behind him. "Play the sensor readings again." A junior officer quickly obeyed, bringing up the holographic display. The scene replayed. The scout ship entering normal space near Mars, then the strange blue field appearing around it. When the field vanished, only ancient debris remained. "Sir," his chief scientist approached cautiously, "the age of the debris. Our tests show the metal has degraded as if thousands of years had passed." In the war room of the United Earth Defense Council, they watched the Imperial fleet through their own sensors. The massive ships had been motionless for hours, running scan after scan of both the debris field and Earth itself. Admiral James Walker of the Earth Defense Force stood before the council, his weathered face showing careful optimism. "They're confused," he explained, pointing to the Imperial fleet's formation. "Look at how they've pulled back, tightening their defensive positions. They're afraid." Dr. Miller, still coordinating from his observatory, sent through new data. Their energy emissions have changed. They're directing massive power to their shields, not their weapons. They think we might do it again. The council chamber buzzed with excited whispers. The Empire, which had conquered 1,000 worlds, was showing fear, or at least extreme caution. Back on the Imperial flagship, High Commander Marcus received reports from his fleet's best minds. None could explain what they had witnessed. Their scans of Earth showed only a primitive civilization. Basic satellites, simple fission power, and early spaceflight capability. Yet they had just witnessed technology that surpassed even the Empire's understanding. Could it be a natural phenomenon? He asked his advisors. Some unique property of this solar system? His chief scientist shook her head. "No, sir. The field was clearly artificial, precisely controlled. But our sensors can't detect any power source or technology capable of creating it. It's as if," she hesitated, "as if they have technology we can't even detect." In the Phoenix facility, Dr. Reed and his team monitored the Imperial fleet's every move. Dr. West noticed something interesting in their scan patterns. "They're looking in the wrong places," she said, almost amused. "Their sensors are focused on space-based installations and surface technology. They haven't even considered looking deep underwater." Dr. Reed nodded. "That's the beauty of it. They're so advanced, they've forgotten that sometimes the best hiding place is the simplest one." The hours ticked by. The Imperial fleet maintained its distance, their usual confidence shaken by this display of unknown power. Their own weapons, while devastating, worked through known principles. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, gravity distortion. But this was something entirely new. In the Empire's 10,000-year history, they had absorbed countless civilizations, each with their own unique technologies, but all had followed understood scientific principles. This was different. This violated what they thought were the fundamental laws of physics. Admiral Walker received a priority message from the Imperial flagship. He read it aloud to the council. "Your demonstration has been noted. We request clarification of your technological capabilities." The room fell silent, waiting for his response. After a moment's consideration, he replied with a message that would be remembered in human history books. "We have shown you what we can do to one ship. We trust this makes our position clear. The Empire, used to dealing with civilizations that either surrendered immediately or fought with predictable weapons, found themselves in uncharted territory. Their sensors continued their relentless scanning, trying to understand what they had witnessed, while their commanders debated their next move. In the Phoenix facility, Dr. Reed watched the Imperial fleet's scans wash harmlessly over their hidden installation. Sometimes, he said to his team, the greatest power lies not in what you can do, but in what others think you can do. The Empire had come expecting to find a primitive world ready for conquest. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand. And nothing terrifies an empire more than the unknown. The red dust storms of Mars swirled beneath the Imperial fleet as they maintained their position, keeping a careful distance from Earth. 12 hours had passed since the demonstration, and tension filled every ship in the fleet. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, High Commander Marcus faced a situation no Empire commander had encountered in 10 millennia. His officers waited nervously as he studied the latest reports. 3 more scout ships have detected unusual energy fluctuations around Earth, his sensor chief reported. But we still can't identify their source or nature. Marcus gripped the railing of his command platform. And the humans? They're waiting, sir. They've made no aggressive moves. Their primitive satellites continue their normal operations. Their communications remain unchanged. It's as if they're completely unconcerned by our presence. In the Project Phoenix facility, Dr. Reed faced his own crisis. Warning lights flashed across control panels as engineers worked frantically to stabilize the system. Ring 9 is showing microfractures, Dr. West reported, her voice tense. The demonstration strained the system more than we anticipated. Dr. Reed studied the damage reports. Even at just 15% power, Phoenix had pushed its limits. The quantum fields had been stable, but the physical structure holding them in place was another matter. Above them, in the council chamber, Admiral Walker received updates from military installations worldwide. Every nation remained at high alert, their combined forces ready. Though they all knew conventional weapons would mean nothing against the Imperial fleet. They're testing us, the Admiral explained to the Council. Each scout ship that approaches is measuring our response, looking for weaknesses. But more importantly, they're looking for any sign that our demonstration was a bluff. Dr. Miller's voice came through the speakers. Admiral, I've analyzed their fleet movements. They've shifted into a defensive formation I've never seen before. It's like they're preparing for an attack while also being ready to retreat. Something that contradicts everything we've observed about Imperial tactical doctrine. The Council President leaned forward. Can they detect that Phoenix is damaged? No, Dr. Reed's voice was firm. Our containment is holding. As far as they know, we could repeat the demonstration at any moment. Hours passed. The Imperial fleet maintained their position, running constant scans. Earth continued its normal rotation, its people going about their lives while trying not to think about the alien armada hovering near Mars. In the Phoenix facility, Porter monitored the Imperial communications they could intercept. They're arguing, he reported. Some of their captains want to attack immediately. Others want to retreat. The High Commander hasn't made a decision. Dr. West looked up from her repairs. If they attack now, could we fire another shot? Dr. Reed didn't answer immediately. The room knew what that meant. On the Imperial flagship, Marcus received a priority message from the Empire's Central Command. He read it twice, his expression unreadable. Your assessment? He asked his chief strategist. The humans have shown power we don't understand. The strategist replied carefully. They could have destroyed that scout ship completely, but instead they chose to demonstrate something far more terrifying, control over time itself. It was a message, sir. They're showing us they have power over the fundamental forces of the universe. Marcus nodded slowly. And if we attack? Best case, we win but suffer losses unlike anything in Imperial history. Worst case, they do to our entire fleet what they did to that scout ship. Or worse, they might have other capabilities we haven't seen yet. In the council chamber, Admiral Walker watched the Imperial fleet's energy signatures fluctuate. "They're still running battle simulations," he reported. "But there's something else. Some of their ships are calculating faster-than-light jump trajectories." The room held its breath. The Empire had never retreated in its history, but they had also never faced a power they couldn't understand. Dr. Reed stared at Phoenix's damaged systems. They had one shot left, if that. But the Empire didn't know that. Sometimes, he realized, the strongest position was built on perception rather than reality. The standoff continued, two civilizations locked in a silent battle of wills. One built on 10,000 years of unquestioned superiority, the other defending their home with a combination of desperate ingenuity and calculated deception. The next move would determine everything. The tension broke with a single transmission from the Imperial flagship. Every screen on Earth lit up once again with High Commander Marcus's face, but his expression was notably different from his first appearance. The arrogance was gone, replaced by carefully controlled neutrality. "People of Earth," he began, his voice measured. "The Galactic Empire has completed its evaluation of your civilization." He paused, choosing his words with obvious care. "After careful consideration, we have determined that Earth qualifies for sovereign system status." In the Project Phoenix facility, Dr. Reed and his team exchanged glances. Dr. West's hands hovered over the emergency activation controls, ready to attempt one final shot if this was a trick. Marcus continued, "This designation grants your solar system complete autonomy and recognition as an independent power. No Imperial forces will enter your space without prior diplomatic arrangement." His eye twitched slightly. "We look forward to peaceful relations in the future." The transmission ended. On the screen showing the Imperial fleet, ships began powering up their faster-than-light drives. Admiral Walker watched from the council chamber, his expression guarded. "They're really leaving," he said quietly. "The Empire is actually retreating." Dr. Miller's voice came through with urgent sensor readings. "Energy signatures confirm it. They're preparing for light-speed jumps. But they're being very careful to jump away from Earth, not toward it. They're afraid we might interpret any movement in our direction as hostile." Around the world, people poured into streets and squares, celebrating as the massive ships disappeared one by one in flashes of light. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious, not through superior firepower, but through clever strategy and the appearance of strength. In the Phoenix facility, however, the mood was more somber. Dr. Reed stood before the damaged machine, watching as repair crews assessed the extensive damage to the quantum rings. "How bad is it?" Dr. West asked, though she already knew the answer. "Ring 9 is completely fractured," he replied. "The exotic matter containment is failing in sections 3 through 7. Even if we had another 15 years to produce more exotic matter. The structural damage." He shook his head. "Phoenix will never fire again." Porter looked up from his console. "Should we tell the council?" "Not yet," Admiral Walker said, having entered the facility unnoticed. "Today, the world needs to believe in our strength. Tomorrow, we can begin planning our real defenses." Dr. Reed turned to face him. "You knew, didn't you, that we only had one more shot at best?" The Admiral nodded. "Just like I knew the Empire wouldn't risk everything against a power they didn't understand. 10,000 years of victory made them cautious. They couldn't afford to lose face by being defeated by a primitive world." "And now?" Dr. West asked. "Now we have time," Walker replied. "They'll tell themselves they made a strategic decision to avoid unnecessary losses. Their pride will make them rewrite this retreat as a calculated choice. But they'll never forget that somewhere out here is a civilization that can manipulate time itself." In the following days, Earth began to change. Nations that had once pointed weapons at each other now worked together, knowing they had glimpsed something greater than their differences. The Empire's retreat became a symbol of human potential. 1 week after the Empire left, Dr. Reed stood in his office, looking at a piece of debris from the aged scout ship. a reminder of what they had accomplished. His phone buzzed with a message from Admiral Walker. Project Phoenix 2 approved. Full international backing. When can you start? He smiled, thinking of the new designs already forming in his mind. The Empire would return one day. Perhaps in years, perhaps in centuries. But next time, Earth would be ready with more than just a clever bluff. In the vast darkness of space, the Empire's ships carried tales of a small blue world that had done the impossible. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire had learned fear. And sometimes that was the greatest victory of all. Earth had won its freedom not through superior strength, but through the perfect combination of innovation, strategy, and humanity's greatest talent, making their opponents believe they were more powerful than they actually were. The stars seemed a little brighter that night, as if welcoming humanity to a new age among them.